Andy Raynor, the FOD runner. Thanks so much for joining me on the Sweat Elite podcast. How you doing today?
I am good. Thank you very much for inviting me on here. Very excited to chat all things running. Yeah, feeling good today, mate.
Yeah, fresh off a very solid race on the weekend. I'd love to start by talking a bit about something that I've become very interested in recently, and it's about people's progression when it comes to the marathon, half marathon, and also the way that they recover and the way that they sort of
hmm
structure their training. So, to start, I'd love to hear a bit about your lifetime mileage as a runner and how much you think you might have done in total in your life, and then sort of how you view lifetime mileage when it comes to recovery and progress.
Absolutely. I started running 10 years ago, so 2015. It was literally a New Year's resolution, January the 1st. So it's pretty easy to remember. And I don't remember exactly the first 3 or 4 years. I remember logging around about 1,200 miles in my first year. And basically, what I did was take it up to 300 miles a year until I got to about 2,000 miles around about 5 years ago ish. So there was that kind of progression because that's kind of when I jumped onto Strava, maybe a little bit before. And then every year I've just tried to take it up 100 to 150 miles a year. So last year I got just over 2,700 miles, and the goal this year is 2,800. So just gently increasing it every single year.
Do you feel like the more volume you do in your overall lifetime, anything's changing in a sense of recovery or whatnot? I know you've recently adopted a somewhat new approach to sort of polarized training. It'd be good to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like lifetime miles makes a humongous difference to recovery training, understanding efforts. I share quite a similar philosophy with you when it comes to I like to work on effort. I don't like obviously I love my gizmos and gadgets, but I don't when I'm out there doing a workout, I don't stress about paces or whatever. I'm like locked into whatever effort I need to be locked into. So in terms of lifetime miles, I think with lifetime miles comes experience and knowing what effort you should and shouldn't be pushing to. Obviously, we get it wrong here and there, but for the most part, like I feel like I've got that pretty well dialed in. And then also just kind of understanding not just a recovery, like what I need when I need it. Like for example, after a hard session, I'll do hard recovery, which might be some stretching, a massage gun, maybe an Epsom salt bath, something like that. But I won't do that the day before a session because I want to keep a bit of tension in the legs ready for the session. I don't want my muscles to feel sluggish or anything. So it's also about doing the recovery at the right time after the right sessions and not just for the sake of it. Because I think you can over recover, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just loads of little bits and pieces you pick up along the way, I feel helps towards stacking those weeks up, months up, years up.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing. And a little bit more about the current training sort of strategy you've got in place with the hard, easy periods. I'd love to learn a bit about that.
So I was dabbling a little bit in my last marathon block. I had a 12-week block, and the first part of that block didn't particularly go great. It went okay, but it wasn't anything breathtaking. And I was kind of at like a point: should I pull the plug on this, or shall I just crack on? And instead of like just kind of pulling the plug, I decided to go full on, and I did what I would class as more intensity than I have ever done in a marathon training block at all. So I do a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday where I would do something of quality. A Tuesday would be a marathon specific session, whether that be sort of like 4 by 3 miles, progressing up to 16 miles straight through at marathon pace. So one Tuesday evening, I did 20 miles. 16 of that was at marathon pace, too easy either side, warm up, cool down. That was the peak. Fartlek workout on a Thursday out on the trails. And then on Saturday, on the weekend, I would do some kind of long run with intensity in it. And so I've kind of dabbled with that in the past, but never to the degree, or like my 60 miles at marathon pace would be something I typically put on my weekend run. And I do like a smaller marathon session, maybe like 10 by a K, 12 by a K or something. So I shifted things around a lot. I put a lot of intensity and I rocked, and that was for literally 5 weeks. I did a 5 week window with a 2 week taper then. And I was in and felt like I was in the shape of my life.
Hmm.
So I've kind of taken that forward into this block when I'm training for a half marathon. It's 12 weeks. The first 6 weeks I've spent, first 5 weeks, I should say, was on the hills. Weeks 5 to 8, sorry, apologies. Weeks 1 to 4 was very much dedicated on the hills, fartleks out on the rolling terrain. 4 to 7, again, just like the marathon, I did a mini 3 week block where I did Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday of quite intense work. again, more than I would usually do. The workouts were normally like longer, a lot more intensity in there, to the point where on the third week I was like, okay, I feel like I'm getting what I need to get out of this. If I can get a couple more workouts done, then I can ease off, because I've got 2 weeks of back-to-back races, which I've just had the one last week.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was, at the end of that third week, I finished that hard long run, just about hit paces, legs were tired, I was frazzled, but then I freshened up last week and I felt like unbelievable at the race. Ran a huge 5 mile PB. And then that's translated into this week, where I've done a mini version of that, where I did the race on Sunday. I did 90 minutes easy yesterday on Monday, and today I've done a big 14-mile run in the morning. 10 of that was 10 by 3 minutes over under, hard paces, and then I've done another double tonight, so I've got another 5.5 easy. So I've done a 19.5 mile day, and then for the rest of the week I'll basically do easy and steady. So I'm kind of having a bit of joy with putting some small intense blocks throughout the training period at the right time, and it's reaping some big rewards so far.
How long are those blocks normally?
So in the marathon training, I mean, that was, to be honest with you, the first time I'd really experimented with it, but I did that for 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And don't quote me on it exactly, but I think I started off around 3 by 3 miles or 4 by 3 miles at marathon effort, and I just progressed up like 4 by 5k, got up to, as I said, 16 miles at marathon effort, and that was over a 5 week period. Mm-hmm. In this half marathon block, I've done a 3 week one, so I did, as I said, 1 to 4 just hills, very aerobic stuff, everything fartlek, no paces, nothing like that, just working on strength. And then I did a specific 3 week block here, where I've just literally put in more intensity than I normally would. I'm then going to have 2 weeks now where it's a little bit easier, because I've got 2 races. And then I'm going to have another 10 days after that, maybe even 2 weeks, depending on how I feel, of intensity, and then just a 1 week taper for the half marathon. So I'll do the same again then, because I've got races beyond that half marathon that I also want to target. So I'm trying to kind of pocket these intense bits of training to fit around the race schedule that I have coming up. So it's a bit ad hoc at the moment. There's a lot of experimentation going on, but I'm going to touch wood and say, so far, good results. It's working well.
Good news. Say Sky have recently come on as a sponsor of the Sweat Elite podcast, and they're sponsoring this particular episode. And I've been wearing Say Sky in training and casually for probably about 3 years now. And I thought I'd show a piece of Say Sky gear that I've been really enjoying lately. The Clean Pace Shield jacket that I'm wearing right now. I've been using this when I've been running, when I've been walking around. It's freezing here in Chicago, so it's perfect for these really cold days. And despite it being really light, it's very, very warm and also very comfortable. And of course, very lightweight. I don't really feel it on me when I'm walking around. So huge thank you to Say Sky for sponsoring the Sweat Elite podcast. And you can use the code SWEAT15 at checkout for 15% off anything at Say Sky's website.
Certainly looks like it is. Thanks for sharing all that. That's really interesting. For those interested, Andy logs on Strava and is on Instagram and shares a lot of what he's doing on there. Quick question about your progression in general. So 2023, I noticed when I was having a look at the Power of 10 that you had a very big jump in the marathon. Now, the 10K and half improved marginally, sort of stayed similar.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that jump, and speaking to anything when it comes to the sort of improvement maybe over the last 3 to 5 years?
I feel like the marathon is such a crazy thing to train for, but there was one specific thing I think in that block, and it was my old coach who introduced me to it at that point, and that was the medium long run. I'm going to put hands down, I'm going to say that was probably a bit of a game changer for me at that moment in time, because I feel like a lot of beginners, intermediates, I would say, do kind of like that. We'll do some speed in the week, we'll do a marathon session, and we'll do and that might be within the long run, or it might be separate, but we'll be doing kind of quite a polar opposite thing, where we're doing some shorter speed work, obviously to keep the speed because we want it, but also then quite a long run. And then potentially a lot of those runs in the middle are just like 60 minutes, 50 minutes for a lot of people. And that was the case for me. But he introduced a medium long run. So my structure suddenly went from like Tuesday and Thursday sessions, and then like a Saturday, just easy, steady long run, to Monday easy, Tuesday steady medium long run, which would get up to 90 minutes, 95 minutes, and then Wednesday session, and then I would have another meaty marathon session on the weekend. and that was an absolute game changer. I think it bridged the gap and improved my speed endurance. Like, I have never crossed 20 miles in a marathon smiling, thinking, this is my day, like I'm going to do it. I've never been in that position. And so for me at that moment, I think that was the game changer. I know there's lots of other maybe things that could be, it could be attributed to weather was good, fueling was half decent, but overall in training, that is a standout feature for me that was a game changer.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. When it comes to diet in general, do you follow one in particular, and do you take anything in terms of supplements, magnesium, iron, or anything like that? Anything that you find helpful?
I have been vegetarian for about 8 years, 9 years, maybe even
Mhm.
10. I've lost count, to be honest with you. But in terms of following a specific diet, no. My rule of thumb is that I will eat clean and healthy and nutritious straight after my runs. So I'll get something really good in. As far as I'm concerned, after that, anything else goes. Calories need to go in the body. I must admit, I probably overeat. So I'm not one of those people that will ever suffer from undereating. I very much pack in as far as I'm concerned, a calorie is a calorie. I'm not really interested in how it gets there. As long as the first thing that goes in my body post session or post run is decent, clean, then that's good. Other than that, vegetarian, as I said, so I eat a lot of vegetarian meats. I'm a big egg fan. I'm not vegan, obviously, so I eat lots of eggs, drink milk. I think there's some good sources of protein in there. To be honest with you, as I said, a calorie is a calorie. I try not to fuss too much over diets.
Yeah, I guess that brings us to the similar question in recovery. Is there anything that you do specific to aid your recovery? It can be relating to diet, anything you take after training, or are you a fan of these boots or anything like that? Anything that you find interesting when it comes to advancing recovery or enhancing recovery, should I say?
Honestly, I think I forgot supplements. I will just quickly say
Yeah.
I'm looking up at my supplements just up there. So every day I have zinc, vitamin D, and iron. So I do have those, and I have magnesium before bed. So that's the answer to that, but nothing more. As for recovery, so I'd spent tons of time doing strength training. I still do 1 to 2 sessions a week, usually one. I'm good at one, sometimes squeezing two. Mobility has been a game changer to the point where I would say mobility is the difference between me being able to session every other day and every 3 days. If I don't do my mobility, I can't do it. I seize up. I'm 38 years old, so I'm not a spring chicken like a lot of the people that we see on Instagram and social media and stuff. So I have to do it, and I suffered that last week actually. Busy week, didn't get to do my mobility. There was no way I was going to get a second session in. So yeah, mobility, that consists of stretching out the hips and the glutes. In particular, I will sit in a deep squat for at least 3, if not 5 minutes every
Nice.
evening. Instead of sitting on the sofa, I'll just sit in a deep squat. And then open up the hips in other ways with different stretches, which I won't go into because I don't know the names of them, but I do loads of them. That is the game changer. And honestly, I think from a recovery perspective, so many people just get stiff and tight and sore after a run, and then they don't do anything about it, and then that manifests day after day. If you can keep yourself a bit loose, absolutely fine. And the only tool I use is a massage gun. And I do swear by a massage gun. I think that's really good. If I've had a really hard session, I'll put on some muscle balm and then massage gun on top of that. So maybe double benefit. Otherwise, just a massage gun.
Okay, interesting. Are you into protein after training or anything else when it comes to downing something as quick as you can after a workout?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll always have something, whether it's a protein bar. So like if I'm out, I'll make sure I go to a shop to get some kind of protein shake or bar because I don't tend to have many powders in the house. So if I'm out, yes, absolutely, I will always go for that first. I would say I eat a relatively balanced. I wouldn't say I'm a massively high carb diet fan. So like the day before my races, I will very much balance protein and carbs. I won't have a huge bowl of pasta. I'll have maybe 2 burgers, vegetarian, and a normal size bowl of pasta. I feel like when I wake up in the morning after too many carbs, I feel really bloated and sick. If I have a balance of the two, then I feel much better, much fresher, and then I can have like my porridge and stuff in the morning before the race. So that tends to be the theme for me throughout the week in general anyway. So I eat quite a lot of protein anyway, so it's just quite natural to me.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Do you think about your body weight at all during training and racing?
No, I must admit, I do get a bit of a complex when I stand on the start line because I am taller than a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that I might come across a few people relatively similar to my height.
How tall are you? Exactly.
I'm 6'6", so nearly pretty much 2 meters, and yeah, there are people that are skinnier than me. I won't lie, I have a bit of a gut on me, and I do think to myself, like, there's free speed there. If I just controlled my diet a little bit more, I could easily speed up without extra training. Do you know what I mean? Like it's on me. I could shift it, but I don't ever control it. We haven't got scales in the house. I don't weigh myself. It's very rare that I do. I just try and, as I said, a calorie is a calorie. I'll eat until I feel okay. In the summer, it falls off me. Like I will be quite shredded. In the winter, I haven't shifted the Christmas weight still, so it just goes in natural cycles for me.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Switching gears to psychology more so, and when you're in a race, when things get really tough, especially in the back end of a marathon, you've done quite a lot of marathons. Where does your mind go when you might feel like you want to stop and you're really struggling around that 2020? Oh, you mentioned before, you've got to that point without struggling, but sometimes you do struggle, like we all do.
Yes.
What goes through your mind during those sorts of phases of thought, and how do you overcome those phases of thought and get to the finish line as fast as you can?
The only thing that's really started to really get me through is thinking mile by mile, because I'll always go in and have a goal time or a goal pace, and naturally the easiest thing to do is the second that starts to slip is to just let your mind wander and to go into dark places. And in my early days, there's no shadow of a doubt that I would quite happily have just slunk off into a bush and just never be seen again at mile 22, 23, 24, because I'd have probably bonked and hit the wall at 16 or 17. And so by that point, I'm in a really dark place. As I've got better at marathons, those places don't come really until 20, 21, 22 usually. I still haven't quite got fueling right, but I can at least get to there. So I find the further that I get in, the better. The reality is, though, London was a perfect example for me this year. I was quite sick at the start. I didn't respect my body. I pushed it too much. I was an idiot. I still rocked up at the start line. And mile 22 hit. I was using Morton gels. I threw up all over the road in front of loads of people. It was super embarrassing. You've run London. The streets are lined with people. You just want to be swallowed up. And I'm coming down towards Big Ben, almost walking like I'm trotting. People are flying past me. And at that moment in time, I just thought to myself, you can't shy away from this. You've got to take ownership. This is your responsibility. All you can do now is get to that finish line and do better next time. Analyze what's gone on. And I will literally think that deeply about it. I will even go into the point of, even at that moment in time, I'll start to think, what could have caused this in training? And although London was easy because I was sick in the build-up, I've had other ones where I might have missed a few sessions, or something might have happened in the build-up, and I'm like, that's what's caused it. Or, you didn't take your gels like you were meant to, or you've spaced out your fueling too much and you've got it wrong. And so at that point, I just go, right, just get through the next mile, and suddenly all I do is visualize and go, I've got 4 miles to go. You remember that 4-mile route you run at home? That's all you've got to do. You've got 3 miles left to go. That's a park run. You've got 2 miles to do. That's from your front door out to there and back again. And I find that makes it easier, just visualizing routes from home, because you know that they're quite easy to do and you do them all the time.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Whenever I get within 5K or 3 miles, I think the same thing. I'm like, it's a warm up or a cool down to go. You can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. The 4 mile one's interesting. You got your own loop, so that feels probably pretty short in your mind. So that's a short way to finish off.
I literally have a 3, 4, and a 5 mile loop that I can do, and I can visualize all of them. After that, like if I'm 6 miles out, I can't even say I'm going to be positive. But if it's 5, 4, 3, instantly in my head, and you think, well, I do that every day. Like that's my run that I do as a minimum, so you can do it.
Yeah, awesome. Speaking about races, doesn't have to be the marathon. It could be the half marathon or the 10K. Which races are you really interested in doing in the future? And also, I'd just like to hear, this is actually something I didn't mention in the set of questions that I'd like to ask you, which has been maybe your favorite 10K, half, and full marathon to date? And then which ones would you like to do in the future?
I think I want to put a bit. Well, this year I'm skipping a spring marathon because I want to do a half block and then get straight. Like I've already booked my first 5K for basically the 2nd of April, so I want a whole summer of speed, and then I will see how I feel in the autumn about maybe dropping into a marathon. For now, I've really neglected the half. That's probably my favourite distance alongside the 10K. Those two are right up there. I think in terms of favourites, I'm sure you can resonate with this. You will have a race that you can't believe has happened. You pinch yourself and you're like, what? How did I just do that? Like, I knew I was in good shape, but how did that happen? And for me, that was Borton 10K 2 years ago when I ran 33:00, because I have never got close to that since, not even within 30 seconds. Like I think the closest I've done is 33:31, and that was on a course that was dubiously measured, I'd say. So the best is like 33:38. And so my goal this year is to get closer to that. So from a 10K perspective, it's got to be Borton. From a half marathon perspective, I haven't really done particularly many exciting half marathons. I did really enjoy Oxford half marathon. I thought that was pretty decent, but otherwise I've not. I can't say that there's many. I went out to Barcelona last year and was gonna do it, but I was too sick to do it, so I didn't do it. But just watching it, I thought, man, that'd be amazing. And for the marathon, well, I have mixed feelings about London. I should really say London, but I don't know. I'm not sure about it. I suppose I prefer the low key ones. I'm not great with crowds, but as a spectacle and being involved in London, it's like you've got to do it, even if it's just once. But in the future, I just want to explore Europe more. There's so many incredible marathons in Europe, and I'm not even going to say the big ones like Valencia and Berlin and stuff, because as much as I'd love to do those, there are so many other really good ones. Like Frankfurt, I'd say, is one that I'm quite interested in doing. Really good field, but not as well publicised. Amsterdam, I'd love to go and do Amsterdam. There's a few that I'd love to go and do, and then eventually I'd love to head over to the States and do a couple of the majors. I think the one on my bucket list is Boston, of course.
Yeah, nice one. To finish off with, a question I didn't warn you about, but in my mind, I always have a time that I think I can ultimately get to in the marathon. Do you have one? And you don't have to share one if you don't want to. You can pass.
I would be happy to retire if I could get a sub 2:30. I don't feel like I need to get, like, I've got other times in mind for shorter distances. Like I would love to break 1:10 for the half marathon. I'd love to run sub 30. If I'm honest, if I'm brutally honest, I'd love to run sub 31 for the 10K. I'd love to run 30 something. But that, I mean, all of this requires so much more than I can possibly give. But like, those are my proper targets for a marathon. As I said, if I get a 2:20 something, I could knock it on the head and be absolutely fine with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Andy, thank you so much for joining the Rapid Fire podcast. Really appreciate it. Where do people follow your journey more so if they're not already following you already?
YouTube is where I mostly post all of my stuff, FOD Runner, and then I'm also on Instagram and TikTok and Strava. I'm over on those platforms as well. Same, the FOD Runner.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Andy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.